Merry Christmas, fam. Let's go. I told y'all I was going to provide evidence that Christmas is not a pagan holiday, and as promised, here I am and I'm ready to go. So let's get to it. So here's my hit list, and over the next few days, we're going to be knocking them down one by one. So in this video, I'm going to demonstrate empirical evidence that Christmas is not a pagan holiday, and I'm going to prove it using sources. In fact, the belief that Christmas is a pagan holiday or has roots in paganism didn't even originate until the 17th to 19th century from die-hard Protestant fundamentalists who were trying to link Christmas and Easter to paganism. The person who most influenced this belief was none other than Alexander Hislop in a book he wrote in 1853 called The Two Babylons. Hislop claimed that Roman Catholicism was nothing more than rebranded Babylonian paganism, and that all the holidays associated with Catholicism are actually ancient Babylonian religious festivals in honor of the heathen gods. So I'm going to show you how Hislop started with a conclusion and manipulated evidence to support it. His ideas in Two Babylons have absolutely no factual basis whatsoever. In this first quote by Hislop, he claims that Catholics chose December 25th for the date of Christmas because it was linked to a festival celebrating the birth of Ishtar's son, Tammuz. The entire premise of Two Babylons is that the papal worship of the Catholic Church is traced back to the worship of Nimrod and his wife Ishtar, who is the same deity as Semiramis. Yet, there isn't a single source confirming that Nimrod and Semiramis were actually husband and wife. In fact, they didn't even live in the same century. And to make matters worse, there is not a single source that is given as evidence for Semiramis being the mother of Tammuz. Hislop also claimed that Christmas could be traced back to the birth of Isis's son, Horus, who was born, quote, about the time of the winter solstice, end quote. Unfortunately, Hislop's source for this, The Ancient Egyptians by Sir Gardner Wilkinson, actually stated that the son of Isis who was born, quote, about the time of the winter solstice, end quote, was not Horus, the older son, but another son of Isis named Harpocrates. And the feast celebrating his birth was in the spring, not on December 25th. So the very source of the myth of Christmas being pagan is clearly a piece of anti-Catholic propaganda that has no claim to biblical or historical accuracy. So I'm about to drop 10 sources on you that will prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that Christmas was not a copy of any pagan holiday. Let's get it. So traditionally, the Eastern Church celebrated the Nativity and a holiday called Epiphany. Epiphany means appearance or manifestation, and Christians celebrated it on January 6, 12 days after Christmas Day. On this day, Western Christianity recognized Christ's manifestation to the Gentiles. So remember Epiphany because it's going to be important in a minute. All of the sources I'm going to show you will demonstrate that very early there was a belief in the church that the date of the death of Jesus would also reflect his birth or conception. So our first source is Tertullian in his work Against the Jews, written circa 200 AD. Tertullian reports that the 14th of Nisan in the year Jesus died was equivalent to March 25th in the Roman solar calendar. This is also the day of the crucifixion according to the Gospel of John. March 25th is, of course, 9 months before December 25th. It was later recognized as the Feast of Annunciation, the commemoration of Jesus' conception. So again, they believed that the date of the death of the Messiah would also reflect the day he was conceived. Our second source is from Hippolytus' commentary on Daniel, written between 202 to 211 AD. Yale University T.C. Schmidt affirms this quote reflects a belief by Hippolytus that Jesus was conceived on March 25th, born 9 months later on December 25th, and died on March 25th, 29 AD. Now, operating in intellectual honesty, only 5 of the Sanford manuscripts actually have the date of December 25th. Some scholars believe that it could have been an interpolation or a later addition to Hippolytus' words. But that really doesn't matter because in 2 other sources attributed to Hippolytus, he says the same thing. Those would be the Canon and Chronicon. You can see the calculations from Hippolytus in the Chronicon here. He's using the Bible to attempt to count the years from the creation of the world until his present day in 235 AD. A fragment of Hippolytus' canon is inscribed on a statue in Rome where he was attempting to calculate the past dates of the Passover. Although Hippolytus' Passover calculations were flawed, on one piece of evidence in the canon, it states that the genesis or conception of Jesus was 2 April 2 BC. Again, I can't stress enough, this is not evidence of the accuracy of Hippolytus' work, but it is a reflection of why the church celebrated the birth of Christ as December 25th. Our third source is Clement Stromato. Clement was using a mobile Egyptian calendar, but the result is still the same. Clement believed that Jesus died on the Passover, which, like Hippolytus, he places on either the 25th of Pharmenoth, which is the vernal equinox in the Egyptian calendar, or the 19th or 25th of Barmuthi. Now, notice that 5 times in his statement, Clement mentioned other sources which use the same calculations. Scholars such as Schmidt affirm that it is probable that Hippolytus was one of those sources. So, for our fourth source, we turn to Julius Africanus, who wrote the first Christian chronography. Julius was a Roman Christian historian who dated Jesus' conception to March 25th, the same date which he would have held that the world was created, which after 9 months in his mother's womb would result in a December 25th birth. Source number 5 is Augustine's Epiphany sermon, where he argues that the Donatists refused to celebrate in the Epiphany celebration with them, inferring that they already had their own celebration, Christmas. Talley asserts in North Africa, as at Rome, it seems certain that Christmas was established before the Epiphany. One is left with a strong sense that the Donatists did celebrate Christmas. Since the Donatist schism occurred in 311 AD, this means that Christmas celebration had to precede that date. Furthermore, he added that this could be evidence that the origin of Christmas could have been North Africa as opposed to Rome. Source number 6, the chronography of 354, is quite possibly our strongest piece of evidence. This is an almanac presenting lists of Roman holidays, councils, city prefects, and lists of burial dates, one of Roman bishops and another of martyrs, with the indication of the cemeteries in each case. Both of these burial lists are in calendrical, not historical order. And the first date given in the one of the disposition of the martyrs is December 25th. The quote states, quote, December 25th, Christ is born in Bethlehem of Judea, end quote. Fam, this means that the Romans marked the beginning of their liturgical calendar based on the date of Christ's birth. That's amazing. So our 7th source is an anonymous 4th century North African treatise entitled, quote, On Solstices and Equinoxes, end quote. It states, quote, so our Lord was conceived on the 25th of March. It is the day of the Passover and of the Lord's suffering as well as his conception. He suffered on the very same day that he was conceived, end quote. Our 8th source is St. Gregory of Nazianzus' sermon in which he preached on Christmas Day AD 380. Gregory affirms the name of Theophany because God appeared unto man, as well as the name Nativity because he was born. He also shows a stark distinction between these celebrations that they were celebrating and the ones of the heathens or pagans. Our 9th source is a homily delivered on December 20th, 386 by John Chrysostom, who was anticipating the Feast of Nativity or Jesus' birth occurring in 5 days' time. And our final source is Augustine's On the Trinity, which he began in 399 and completed circa 419 to 426 AD. In it, he affirms belief in Jesus' conception and death on the 25th of March, and that tradition affirmed Jesus' birth 9 months later on December 25th. Family, this is 10 sources, 10, as early as 200 AD, affirming the early church's belief of December 25th as being the day of Jesus' birth and incarnation, and March 25th as the day of his conception. 4 of these sources predate Constantine and his embrace of Christianity. This means the Roman Empire was still persecuting Christians because they believed that the worship of the monotheistic God of Christianity angered their polytheistic pantheon of gods. With this being the case, it would make absolutely no sense for Christians who consistently showed a willingness to be brutally tortured and martyred for their faith in Jesus to turn around and copy or replace that worship by copying the celebrations of the same pagan empire that was persecuting them. In the next video, I'm going to show even more evidence that given these dates, it is impossible for Christmas to be a copy of Saturnalia, which didn't even occur on December 25th, Sol Invictus, or any other pagan holiday. The evidence will prove that it is far more likely that the pagans copied the Christians. Blessings.